Hey, beautiful soul. Welcome to Spirit Speakeasy. I'm Joy Giovanni, Joyful Medium. I'm a working psychic medium, energy healer, and spiritual gifts mentor. This podcast is like a seat at the table in a secret club, but with mediums, mystics, and the spiritual luminaries of our time. So come behind the velvet ropes with me and see inside my world as I chat insider style with profoundly gifted souls. We go deep, share juicy stories, laugh a lot, and it wouldn't be a speakeasy without great insider secrets and tips. You might even learn that you have some gifts of your own. So step inside the Spirit Speakeasy. Hey, beautiful soul, and welcome to another episode of Spirit Speakeasy. I'm your host, Joy Giovanni, Joyful Medium. I help people step out of overwhelm and into love through mediumship readings, psychic readings, and coaching, among other things. Today we have such a special episode. I feel like I say this every week, but I really have been wanting to share all these incredible people for so long. Our guest today is my friend and colleague, Sheetal Story. Sheetal is this incredible Aquarian woman, I guess, because she has so many different things that she does. Today is extra special because she's going to be giving us an astrology prediction forecast for this Spring Equinox that's coming up in just a couple weeks on March 20th this year, 2023, and really sets the tone for the rest of the year. It's apparently, I didn't even know this, but it's apparently the astrological new year. So it's kind of that reevaluation period. She tells us not only some heads up, some technical pieces, what to expect, how we can best use this to help ourselves with our own fulfillment and goals that we want. So this is a really exciting episode you're not going to want to miss. For those of you that have asked me about public demonstrations of mediumship, so big mediumship events, I do have one coming up online in honor of this spring equinox that we're talking about today. It's actually on March 19th, this event. It's called Spring Forward with Spirit. If you're on my Instagram page, you can find it in the link in bio to get tickets. If you are on my Facebook page, there are posts about it at Joyful Medium. If you're on my Joy's Soul Spa private Facebook community, which you're all invited to, there are posts there about it. But I'm really excited. This event is actually a collab with myself and another medium, friend of the show, Carolyn Wilkins, who you might remember from our premiere launch episodes back in December. She is an incredible jazz musician and does that Akashic trance piano healing as well as being a medium. So we're going to be giving messages and details from loved ones in the spirit world to several members of the audience. So for those that have been asking to attend a demonstration of mediumship, this is online. It is Sunday, March 19th. It is at 12 p.m. Pacific, which is 3 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. UK. I didn't forget about all my UK lovelies. So that event is coming up, and I have some other exciting announcements coming up. But I want to get right into this interview, this chat with my lovely friend, Sheetal Story. Hey, beautiful souls, and welcome to another episode of Spirit Speakeasy. If you are a returning friend, so happy to have you back. If you're a new guest, buckle up because today's episode has so much. We have a very special guest today who's going to share so many things with us. I'm going to introduce her so we can dive right into it, but we have a very special, essentially a gift that she's going to give us, which is giving us some predictions and energy report around the spring equinox that is just around the corner. So let me tell you all about my guest today. It is Sheetal Story. Sheetal is a psychic medium, a professional certified astrologer, a grief support counselor, and a law of attraction master coach. Sheetal's mission is to help heart-centered people cultivate and strengthen their intuition, to trust and use it every day so they can live their most aligned and soul-led purpose in life. Intuition is the compass of the soul, and she teaches that your soul always knows the way. The more you learn to trust your intuition and flow with the energy that life presents, the more you'll open up to the most magical opportunities for growth and abundance. Let's welcome our guest today, Sheetal Story. It is so good to see you.
It's so good to be here. Thank you so much, Joy, for having me. I'm so excited to talk with you and see you again.
Me too. And I'm so grateful to call you colleague and friend. So we haven't seen each other and caught up in just a minute here, but it's wonderful to have you. I'm so excited.
So excited when you asked me and you sent me, do you want to be on the podcast? I was like, that's a hell yes.
Awesome.
I love everything that you do. I mean, we've known each other now for what, 4 years?
I feel like we haven't seen each other in like 3, so maybe 5. I don't know. Online. Time in this last little bit, as I'm sure you can really speak to, has been just strange. So wonky, right?
Mm-hmm.
So strange. That brings us to my first question. I do want to understand how you came into these gifts. I was reading a little bit more about your story and understanding that you were experiencing at least your psychic and mediumistic gifts at a very young age.
I really was. I was born with the ability to see. I think we all are born with the ability to see spirit and energy and aura. Well, not everybody, but in terms of we all have that energetic ability about us, right? We're energetic beings having this human experience. And ever since my mom's a spiritual healer, we're a very spiritual family. And so I just remember spirit being around the house all the time, having these experiences with spirit out and about, and it just felt normal. And then I realized how different I was one day when I was walking to school with a bunch of people from the neighborhood, and I saw this man on a swing, and I thought, oh, how creepy. Look at that weird man on the swing. And everybody looked at me and went, Sheetal, that's the wind. There's nobody on the swing. And I looked back and the swing is empty, and but it's the only one swinging on the whole, there's like 4 swings, and it was the only one swinging. And I thought, that's weird, but no one else thought it was weird. And everyone looked at me kind of strange. And I realized, oh my gosh, I do not want to be different. I mean, I'm first generation Canadian. My parents were immigrants to Canada from India and Malaysia. And so I really just wanted to fit in. So at that point, I was also having really bad nightmares. And my mom said, if you don't want this anymore, you can just turn it all off. So I did just that. I just turned it off at 9, almost like kind of like a shutting of the door, if you will, on the top of your head. And I didn't realize at the time, but looking back, at that time I was very artistically inclined. I wanted to draw. Actually, I wanted to be a designer because I loved drawing clothes and
wow.
Yeah, really creative. And after I closed all that side of my gifts off, I actually wanted to go into science. And actually I wanted to be a geneticist to help women have babies. That's what was
so interesting.
My thing. So I went in that kind of scientific path for a while until I hit a plateau and went, oh, this is not what I want to do at all. And then university, I switched over to business. I met my husband. We went to Vancouver, had kids, came back, actually had one kid, came back to Edmonton where I live now, and had my second kid. And at that time, then all of my gifts started to come back in. And that was interesting because my life was like, I'm going to be in corporate. I'm going to be a purchaser, and no, the universe had totally different plans for me. So it was a very, very interesting time because I literally thought I was going crazy, right? I'm seeing dead people. They're telling me stuff about people that I'm actually getting evidence that what they're saying is true. That was what set me on my path. And I had a friend of mine that said, you should see this astrologer friend of mine. She'll tell you if you're legit or not. And I was like, okay. An astrologer tell me I'm legit. This is interesting. So she said, she's a world-renowned astrologer, Sheetal, and she lives in Edmonton. I was like, world-renowned? Lives here? Like in Edmonton? What is that? And sure enough, her name was Chris McRae. She became my teacher. But I went to see her for a very first visit, and she looked at my chart. I didn't tell her anything about me. And she said, what is it that you do again? I said, I'm a sales rep in the food industry. And she's like, no. What is it that you really do, Sheetal? Yeah. She's like, no, bullshit. What do you really do? And I'm like, I think I see dead people. And she's like, oh my gosh. Yes, that makes absolute sense. And here's why. And then she started to go through my chart and tell me things about my childhood, about the way like energy works within me, like my headaches, my stomach aches, all the things she started to tell me about it just based on my astrology chart. And I went, oh my God, I have to learn what this magic, this science is. Yeah. I went away from that reading going, I have no idea what she wrote on the page. It was all hieroglyphics, but she said sort of 3 things that really spoke to my heart. And I went, I have to learn this. And I signed up for her very first intro class to astrology. And she ended up becoming my teacher. And I learned from her for 6 years I was at her house every week learning in a class of some kind. She became my mentor. And then I wrote the big entrance 6-hour exam to the association that I wanted to join. And I passed it, and I became a certified astrologer. And then she passed away 2 years later. So she's on my spirit team now. She's wonderful, and she's an icon in the world of astrology. And I'm just so lucky and blessed that I got to learn from her. So
are you able to share her name? I'm so curious.
Oh yes, her name is Chris McCrae. And yeah, Chris is, she's authored 6 books. She actually published one that went, I think, into print on the day that she passed away. So she finally kind of finished that book that she was 93 at the time she passed away.
Incredible.
This woman was
my goodness.
Traveled right up till the time she passed.
You have brought up so many things that I want to touch on. First, I love that you probably don't even know that you highlighted this, but that we, no matter what our astrology says or what our, ideal spiritual path in life is, we still have this free will choice. We could still choose to do something that's maybe not as a natural alignment for the expression of our soul. We could be anything we want to be. So for someone that's maybe newer to their gifts or exploring their gifts, just because we have these gifts doesn't mean we have to choose to go further or to use them, and certainly not to use them professionally if we don't want to. So I love that you highlighted that. But also, as you and I both know in this work, Spirit has this very interesting way of kind of looping it around to us again, and almost like conveyor belt style, like offering it to us again, like how about now? Like maybe now. So I love that was your experience. I want to ask you some questions about the way you experience mediumship. Now, what I feel like I hear you saying is that you were experiencing it kind of like we see each other right now, if you're on video with us, or how we see another person or another object outside of ourselves. Is that still how you experience the spirit world?
Oh, I wish it was so clear when it all started. I mean,
it's a less usual way. That's why I'm asking. Kids often experience it that way, though.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's evolved now. It's interesting because in my development now as a medium, it's coming in as kind of just this clear, like just knowing, just this knowing of things, and it's hard because before I used to see it, or see it clairvoyantly, I guess. Or hear it, or even like even seeing names, like I would see Georgina, I would see the name written, and now I just kind of know it. And it's so hard, Joy, because you're not sure, like there's no, you really have to trust to say the name or say the feeling that you're getting. And there's, it's interesting when they go like, how do you know? And I'm like, I don't know. I just know. Like,
it is one of the things that I think is so surprising to people about the work that we do as mediums, is that it is so subtle. It's almost like the whisper of an idea, not even like a full, someone's handing you a bucket of information. It's like so subtle. And I wish. I always tell people, I wish they would stand next to me and talk in my ear, but that's not exactly how it works. So it's so interesting that that's been the growth for you. And I love that you have melded and blended all of these different parts of you and parts of your gifts together. I think another common misconception that you touched on is that often people think of astrology as like the old-fashioned horoscopes in the newspaper, which I don't even know if is a thing anymore, or as like
still
a blog where you can read it.
Yeah.
Still a thing in some places. But really, I understand astrology through friends and colleagues like you as this deep science of so many moving parts. That's just a different type of roadmap into understanding ourselves better. Is that how you identify it now?
I love that you said that. Yeah, astrology can be used for so many different things. And I think, as an astrologer, I think we shy away from it being called a science because so many people, like, science is empirical. It's kind of, it can show that it can be tested time and time again to have the same result. And it is science-like for sure. It is older than religion, which is something that I love when people are like, oh, it's hogwash. I'm like, it's 2,400 years old. And it's been passed around through cultures over time, through, information. And we've been able to use what we've learned through astronomy and see how the correlations of these planets and their cycles, it's predictability. I love that part of it for myself because there's so many branches of astrology, which you might not know. So, I like the personal development side of astrology. There's also it's called mundane astrology, where you see the evolution, the patterns of the astrology as it plays out in politics and geopolitical kind of movements around the world. So that's another
Interesting.
branch of astrology. Then there's astrology where, astrolocation, where you're relocating around the world and you're trying to see which place is actually going to resonate with you. You know, if you've
Oh,
ever
that's
been to a
fascinating.
location and you feel like this feels like home, you can see that in an astrolocation or astrocartography, it's called. So
That's
there's
so
lots
interesting.
of
I didn't know
branches.
that.
I know.
I know
It's
that
such a cool
feeling
tool.
too.
So when people are like, or trying to elect a great time for an event, or, elect a great time to open a business, we can use astrology for those things. So there's so many things within astrology than just the horoscope that we've sort of seen publicized in newspapers and magazines, because it's kind of the way that it engages the most people in that way, right? You look up your sign, you're like, oh, does this work for me? Does it not? And depending on the technique, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But when we start to look at these cycles in play in our lives and how they affect us, I think that's what just blew my mind, because she was able to predict things in my life down to the day that something was going to happen. And I started to do it from my clients, and they're like, Sheetal, you can't make this stuff up. Sheetal, you can't make this stuff up. I'm like, I know, isn't it wild? Like, that's why I love astrology, because there's so much data it is science-like. There's so much data with these cycles and prediction, right? There's a 28 and a half day cycle with the moon. So we know every time it's in a new moon, it's a time to plant seeds. And when it's in a full moon, we go a little crazy because the sun and moon are opposite each other, and we feel ourselves almost being torn in two. So there's science behind, there's higher emergency room visits during a full moon. Teachers report their classes are more unruly during a full moon. Like, there's a lot of correlating data. And the one thing that blew my mind the most, Joy, as I was going down this path, is the Farmer's Almanac. And farmers are very matter-of-factly, pretty practical bunch, right? Been around for a long time, lots of kind of passed down traditions and information, wisdom. And the Farmer's Almanac follows the moon cycle.
Isn't that fascinating?
Isn't it? Like, when to plant certain crops, when to, roof your house, like things like that, all follow the moons, not just the crops. It was when to give a loan, when to, do different things in your life. So I was just like, okay, there's a wisdom here that's been passed down through the generations. And somewhere along the way, we've made it poo-poo, woo-woo, it's not real, it's not scientific, when actually it's very scientific. There's so much data, and we actually really test theories in astrology before we adopt it as, this is something we know about this planet or this cycle. So I think, modern astrologers, as myself, we have gone through, I've gone through such a vigorous testing and understanding and learning that I've come to the side of it now where I want to advance this, information and share it with the world, and not just make it woo-woo. Let's use this for the betterment of everybody.
Well, and one of my favorite things about you, and I think one of the things that resonates between us as friends so much, is that you and I both like a little bit of a no nonsense, real world, how am I using this in my real life application? It's wonderful that all these things are, and that we can look into them, but how is this helping us in our day to day to either make choices or design our life, in the best way for us? So I love that you're really focusing on that application of it. And I love that you had such a beautiful marination in mentorship, because I think it's something that's missing in a lot of disciplines these days. So how incredible.
I think so too. And I think a lot of astrologers that I see out there, they're kind of self-taught. They try their best through books and taking, oddsy courses here and there to try to piecemeal it all together. And I was really lucky to be mentored by someone who was one of the pillars of astrology and created some of these some of the data and the research behind some of these techniques and tools that, to have her, just to ask her a question and explain why this is the way it is was just phenomenal. So I'm really blessed that I know she was on my path on purpose, for sure.
I believe that kind of stuff too. And I think the other, two things. One, you had to choose that path to get access to her, because you could have also said I don't care what you say or what these and people that are appearing to me say, I want to continue in sales or whatever. You made that free will choice. So that's pretty incredible. And then also, it's she was leaving her legacy to you in a way, I'm sure among other students, but I just think that's such an incredible experience that you had. And the other thing that I think is so fun to just acknowledge for people who might, not be as steeped in this world as we are, is you said it earlier, she still is on your, what we call the spirit team, or your advisors team from the other side. She still has the ability to work with you and inspire you. I mean, it's a little bit more through the mediumship. And for me, in all of this work, this is where these lines get a little blurry, because is it technically mediumship? Is it technically your intuition? Is it to me, it doesn't necessarily in our own personal work matter what it is. Obviously, when we're working with clients, we need to be a little more specific in telling them where information's coming from. But how do you feel that you're working with her the most on your spirit team, for example?
I love that question. And, I think for all the viewers and listeners too, I want you all to know, we didn't discuss this at all before we talked.
Oh, no.
We didn't know this was where this was going to go.
This is two girls talking.
This is just us having a talk. It's really interesting because after she passed away, it was over COVID, and it was really heart-wrenching. That we all kind of found out after she passed away in a hospital by herself, and she was so sorry.
What a tough loss.
It was awful. And I went through my own grief with that. It's interesting being a medium and being a grief counselor, kind of walking myself through that grief. And I remember my first reading after that. So it was kind of in January, and I was reading for a lady who also happened to be a medium, which was kind of funny. So it was a mediumistic reading. And I was like, oh, and you have this gift. I'm becoming aware that you have this gift as well. And she goes, okay, I have to stop the session for a moment because there's a little lady peeking over your shoulder.
Oh my goodness.
And she says her name is Chris, and she wants to tell you she's really happy you followed astrology. Does that make sense to you? And I was like,
so you got a reading in your
client.
I love it.
And I was like,
funny.
What are the chances of this, right? Like that I'm giving her a reading. I'm like, oh, and you have, and it's really the reading is about her following her mediumistic gifts and then she's like, okay, I have to stop this for a moment because there's a lady that's just over your shoulder and she keeps telling me her name is Chris. And I was like, she just passed away actually like a month ago. So She was like, oh, and that was kind of, I think, validation for me, Joy, right? That she was on my spirit team because I was feeling her around, right?
Yeah.
And as mediums, we can feel our loved ones around. I mean, even non-mediums can feel
of course.
Everyone has the ability to feel their own loved ones. And so I could feel her around. I could feel her over my shoulder, especially when I'm doing astrology kind of talks or readings and that validation just, okay, I know she's here. And I can feel her now as she's like, even now I can feel her, she's with me. So
the other thing that I love about that story is it shows that she is a true spiritual teacher through and through, because you're giving a reading to someone telling them, hey, I really feel like you should pursue these mediumistic gifts. And she's helping them by working with them mediumistically in your session.
That's
so she's
right.
kind of giving this amazing double validation. And these are the reasons why they never cease to amaze me on the spirit side, with how they can orchestrate things and how they can work with us in ways that we just couldn't even, like, you could have never predicted. Oh, and my mentor who just passed is going to be helping my client understand her mediumship and give me a message at the same time. Like, it's such an incredible story. I love that.
The intelligence of the spirit world just like blows my mind, right?
For sure.
Because they just know who's going to be in the room. They know who needs to, speak. They just know what you need to hear and feel and know to say the things. Like, it's just a wild web when you think about it all.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I feel like you believe probably pretty similarly to what I do is that often it's the spirit side that's orchestrating getting their people on this side into a session or to a group reading
absolutely.
or to a talk of some kind. It's usually them giving the nudge of like, hey, so they often know about it way ahead of us.
Oh, I love that you said that, because you're so right. I say that to all my clients, your loved ones bring you to me. So thank them for being here and, let's go. So often, yes, absolutely.
And for me, I just love with you too, that you have a very special qualification as a grief counselor. That's a little bit more of a higher and difficult certification to get because it's more therapy based, obviously. And I can imagine that comes to play in your work all of the time. How did you go from learning astrology under Chris to then deciding, oh, I need to add grief counseling into this, mix with my mediumship and my psychic gifts? And I know you do like 7 other things too.
I have a Sagittarius moon, so that means I need to be like, that's mutable fire. I love exploring and learning and being able to go where my heart's desire. I'm multi-passionate by nature. So
Yeah.
to just do mediumship would be like, I love mediumship, but then I would not like it if I had to do it over and over and over again every day. So then I also do the tarot, and then I do astrology, and then I did the grief counseling and coaching. And it all kind of builds together because, like, even in intuition development, we sit in the seat of the soul. So
Yeah.
you're sitting in that part of you that's emotional. And if you've been pushing down your emotions because you haven't dealt with a grief, guess what's going to come out?
Yeah.
So I started noticing that in intuition development and mediumship, that people were just sad and crying and, and I have natural gifts to sit with people in their grief. I'm a Scorpio rising. So, sitting with the darkness, talking about all the taboo stuff, I'm all in, right?
No wonder.
I don't shy away.
We get along so well.
Yes. Are you a Scorpio?
No, I have a lot of Scorpios in my life.
Yes.
I have all the Scorpios.
Yes. Because that sitting with that darkness or the sadness or the parts of us that we don't shine lights to because it makes us feel bad, we need to have someone sit with us to do that. So I thought that grief counseling was just such a natural fit, especially with mediumship, right? Because so many people come to us because of loss. So helping them with that and understanding, transitions and giving them support through that, it was kind of just natural fit. So even with my grief support clients now that I see, sometimes spirit will come in and they'll come in at the right and perfect time that person needs to hear from them. So early on, there's a grief period of time where people they really just need to cry, right?
Yeah.
They just really need to sit with it. It's a crappy, awful time. And when you start to integrate back into life again, that's when, mediumship reading might be really helpful. That's when grief support might be really helpful. But I've had so many clients, and I'm sure you do too, that have said that the mediumship reading helped them more than years of therapy ever did.
We do hear that so much, but I think you make a really good point that there is a timing thing, and that's going to be, because we're so individual, it's going to be slightly different for everyone.
Agreed.
And I know that the natural inclination for us just as humans is to avoid the discomfort and the sadness. And I'm sure you hear this a lot too. Like, I just want this part to be over. But I know that you believe, like I do, that just pushing down those difficult emotions, they're just going to fester in there and then come out in other less than productive ways usually, and throw some grenades into other areas of our life that we might not want. So would you say one of the big pieces of guidance that you give to people in loss is to figure out a way to be with those feelings?
Yeah, we have a natural tendency to want to kind of be optimistic or want to find meaning in the hard times. Yeah. And I think it's just hardwired into us. And then depending on your background and lineage, you might also be hardwired to just get over it, right? Just move forward, right? You see that a lot through like Eastern European upbringing, because there's so much kind of trauma, especially like in Central Europe, even through the Arabic nations and stuff, where there's just been so much conflict that they just push forward, because if you sit with your emotions, it's too hard. So we start to then see parenting of children not being comfortable with their emotions, right? Stop crying. And, well, you want me to give you something to cry about? My mom said that to me all the time growing up, right? And it's just
everyone our age has heard that on multiple occasions.
Part of the programming. Yeah. And so we now, as a generation, we are cycle breakers, because we're now sitting with our own emotions and then teaching our children how to sit with their uncomfortable emotions. And then learning that when you sit with it, it doesn't last forever. Like, an emotion really only lasts like 30 to 60 seconds if you sit with it, but it's our mind that ruminates on it that keeps it going over and over and over again. So we want to not avoid that. I think integrate and heal from that and learn how to cope and using these tools. So I think a really fun way to do it is through, spirituality, through meditation, through intuition development, because when we start to use these tools, we're getting back into connecting with our true self, which is our soul self, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, and the other thing is, you're teaching intuition at this point and teaching spiritual development at this point, right? I know you did tell me, I'm going to give a little spoiler alert, you do have an Intuitive 101 coming up in April. How do you approach that development? Because especially early on in our gifts, we're a little more fragile, right? Because it's vulnerable to say, like you were saying, the information comes so subtly and we don't necessarily know. And so how do you approach that? I'm sure you do it in a very gentle way. That you have this incredible quality that you're both gentle and strong at the same time. Not everybody has that, obviously. So I'm sure that that's infused into your method.
I think Intuition 101, people who find me through that course often are excited for it. Like they're wanting to come in and learn about their intuition and understand spirituality and what it means for them. And I do it through a very sort of fun, scientific way, which is funny that we started talking about science there, where we talk about science and the energy of science. And we all have this bioplasma field that emanates from us as living beings. And we call that aura in spiritual circles, and that aura can be felt. And there's so much science behind even the Heart Math Institute showing that your heart radiates out like 4 to 6 feet in front of you and behind you. So when we start to play with that and understand it, how does it work for you? Now we start to build our own book of evidence of how do we work with our intuition, what works for us. And I give them homework every week for them to play in the field of their intuition and see how it works. And I'm a Virgo, so I'm a bit of a taskmaster because I'll follow up with you every week on your homework. How did it go? What did you hear? What did you learn? What was your experience? And if you didn't do your homework, it's okay. I'm still going to call on you and I'm still going to ask you, how did it work for you? Right. So they learn very quickly on that this is an experiential class, and I want you to integrate this. Not just take this because it's interesting. It's that now I want you to learn how to use your intuition on the daily. So I think I make it fun. I make it science-based. It's experiential. We get to meet our spirit guides. We get to play in the world of energy and start to learn about how does it work for us, right?
That's so cool. And I will, for everyone watching and listening, I will put a link in the show notes to Sheetal's website and to all of her points of contact. So if you're interested in that Intuition 101 releasing in April, you can get in there. I love the way you said that it is more experiential. And it is, I always think it's funny. People will show up to these classes and think like, oh, I'm just going to coast and watch the course and not actually maybe participate. And it doesn't work that way. It is like exercising that ability to strengthen our understanding of it and our interaction with it, really is kind of the way I think of it. Discernment is usually what we call it in the work, but I know it's not a commonly used word, right?
And self-trust,
yeah.
Right? I think so many people that come to me through this program have lost that self-trust because something happened in their life that they're like, well, I thought my intuition was telling me this, and then here we go. Or, I thought this guy was the one for me, and now he served me divorce papers. And I'm like, it's all perfect. It's all part of your journey. You can trust yourself again because what's ahead is so much better. So I think that's a big part of intuition development is that self-trust and strengthening, as you mentioned, that muscle, because the more you use it, the stronger it gets.
Well, and back to your point about a lot of our upbringing and, either geographically, culturally, all the elements, most of us were kind of gaslit as kids with our intuition when we felt, maybe a parent or a caretaker was upset and we felt they were upset and they would say, oh no, everything's fine. So then they're telling us basically, no, your intuition is wrong. And so after many, many years of that in our schooling, in our families, in our, everywhere, we're getting again and again told, no, what you're feeling is not correct. So your intuition's wrong. So it is a bit of a retraining process. Do you think?
I agree. And I think, a deconditioning.
Yeah, that's a good word.
I think especially when, religion is concerned, and I might say something a little controversial, is that religion teaches you to disconnect from your own knowing because then the church tells you what is right and wrong.
Yeah.
So if you connect back to your own knowing and your own connection to the divine, because you are in essence a piece of the divine, that trumps anything. So I think religion has purposely, especially looking back through the past and the historical roots of religion makes money when you don't believe in yourself. Right. And so,
girl, I got a lot of trouble in elementary school asking nuns about this at Catholic school because I was like, if God lives in my heart and I feel this, then why do I have to go to this man in the little box and tell him? So I'm with you on this. I think think there's a place for it in our lives and in our, a lot of times just in the way that we practice and carry on traditions. But I also think I would love it if as a society collectively, we could be also adding in this intuitive piece, right?
It's so true. And I mean, there are religions around the, and I don't want to say all religion, but there are religions around the world that do talk about that spiritual connection to the divine being within us, and then cultivating that and strengthening it. But it's really interesting, you know, religion gives you sort of dogma, whereas spirituality asks you, like, how does it work for you?
Yeah.
So I think that's why I'm such a spiritual person as well.
Yeah.
Because it really is about your connection. Like, you are God's work. You are God's child. Like,
absolutely.
So, and there's so many people that come to, I don't know for you, but for
Yeah.
me, a lot of people that don't like the God word because there's been so much trauma associated with it. So
yeah, absolutely.
Whether you call it
well,
source,
and I mean, many, I'll say it that way, many of the world religions at their core do have this spiritual element, this personal connection, this personal relationship, but then it's often, you know, glossed over as things have progressed, and it has perhaps in some cases become more about control and money and all of that. It's like there is that undercurrent, if anyone looks for it, in all these different particularly the Abrahamic faiths, but a lot of the faiths, there is a personal element in there. And it's like, wait a minute, it says it right there. Like, why is everyone missing that part? And some highlight it more than others at this point, but I think it's in there, just finding it, right?
Well, it's so interesting. We could have a whole other talk about religion. I know. I'm Hindu by faith, right? So I come from the Eastern faiths, and then I have friends that are Muslim. I have friends that are Buddhist. I have friends that are atheist, which is really interesting when we start having this conversation about it. And even my atheist friends believe that there is like this source of energy that kind of organizes all things.
Yeah.
But they don't believe it to have some sort of dogma,
personality,
kind of, or persona. It's just this kind of energy that pervades. And I was like, well, that's what
like a program running in the background. I didn't know that you and I were similar on this. I've always studied religions and have had friends of many religions. And I'm that girl that's like, is it okay to ask you questions about your faith? And then I'm like, just wanting to understand, you know what I mean? It's just so fascinating. I didn't know we had this in common. That's so cool.
I love it. We have a lot of things in common.
And just like you were saying, you're a Hindu by birth. And so it doesn't mean you have to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. You can keep the practices and the doctrine that resonates with you, and you can still have both. It doesn't have to be so mutually exclusive, right?
Well, and I think this might blow your mind. So I'm Hindu by birth. I've gone to temple and done all like the religious rites for Hinduism, but then I went to a Catholic school my whole life. And then I also studied in a spiritualist church and almost joined spiritualism for 4 or 5 years. So, you know, I've had lots of religious
I'm not surprised at all, knowing you a little bit. So
I'm like, I want to just like try this and see what this is. You know, I think ultimately I'm really happy with, like, I've always been taught that to have respect for everyone's religion.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
That's the case for me.
I agree. I think it's important to respect everyone's religion. And then for each of us as individuals, we can decide for ourselves what resonates with us or what doesn't, and what to take on board and what to not.
Absolutely. That's
which applies to astrology too, I will just say. And it's,
well, and that's why I was going to say I love astrology, because it's non-denominational. It doesn't require you to believe in anything. It's just like gravity. Whether you believe in it or not, it's still working behind the scenes, right? And astrology, it talks about synchronicities. So there's kind of two schools of thought, I think, within astrology. I was taught astrology is these planets all exude force on us as beings on this planet. And so, you know, the moon being the first force that was ever exuded on us in the wombs of our mother's womb, the waters of our mother's womb. That was hard to say. And the moon affects all the water on this planet, or, you know, fluids on this planet. So that's just one example of it. The other part of it that you can think of as well is there's synchronicities always in play. Like, we live in a world of vibration. So if something is moving, you know, on the other side of the universe, we are going to feel it, sense it, know it in some weird way, but we just might not understand why it's happening. So
like a butterfly
astrology
effect,
gives
so
us
to
a why.
speak, right?
Yes, exactly right. So that's what astrology kind of gives words to that. And then I think it also helps you to navigate hard times, because it can tell you like why this is happening for you. This is creating, I always say to people, this is creating a bridge to the next big stepping stone in your life. So you have to go through some changes and hardship, and astrology is showing you what's happened. Not every year can be love and sunshine and roses. You're going to have a rebuilding year. You're going to have a destruction year that's, breaking down the old things. And astrology can show you that. So I think my grief counseling helps people like say it in a way that feels exciting and enlightening versus like, you're going to have some things blow up this year in your life. But all the things for the best reasons, it's going to be so good in a few years' time.
And I love the way of thinking it as a bridge. Like you said, it's just a bridge from getting from where we might be right now to that next place where our soul's wanting us to go, and some free will choice in the mix.
That's right.
With all the synchronicity. That's such a great way to look at it. And that brings us to the very exciting thing that you have prepared for us. At the time that we're releasing this podcast, we are going to be just a couple weeks away from the spring equinox, which I would love if you share a little bit about. I am so excited for spring. I can't even tell you. I am a creature that needs lots of light, lots of the more daylight I can get, the more excited I am about it. And that's essentially part of what spring equinox is that shift where we're having, more light and tipping into, in the Northern Hemisphere anyway,
that's right,
into our springtime. So I would love it if you would say some things about that.
Yes. Oh my gosh,
you have a lot
so much
to say about it.
So this year, the spring equinox happens on March 20th at 2:24 p.m. Pacific time, or, figure out your time zone from there. And it's equal day, equal night. So you've sort of alluded to the astronomy of it. There's more light coming in now into the Northern Hemisphere, less in the Southern Hemisphere. And for us as astrologers, this is a huge time that we all celebrate. It's when the sun moves into Aries. So the equinoxes and the solstices are when the sun moves into the cardinal signs of the zodiac. So the cardinal signs are Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. And these 4 signs are the signs that start the season. So they have a lot of get up and go power. They have a lot of starting energy. I call it CEO energy. They can see the bigger picture. They want to know, they can vision where they need to go and where they want to go. And so Aries season is Aries is the very first zodiac sign of zodiac. And with the sun moving into Aries, it is now our new year. So we actually celebrate it as the beginning of the year for us. And it's even more important than the new year because now the sun and all the planets are setting the tone for the rest of the astrological year that ends on the 19th of March. And it's always kind of within those few dates, like March 18th, 19th, 20th. So depending, we call it a solar return. So for your birthday, for example, your birthday is every year that the sun moves back to the original degree to the minute that you were born. So we call that your solar return day. And your solar return day doesn't always end up on your birthday that you celebrate. It can be either a day or a few days before or after. So as astrologers, we actually can pull up a solar return chart, and that chart will determine or show a theme for that year of your life, what is going to play out in your life. So I love prediction. I mean, it's not a science, there's variation with it. And like you said, there's free will. So, you can choose what you're going to do, but the energy is going to be there in your life. And so when you feel irritated, when you feel frustrated, that's probably a Mars transit. Mars is our motivation, our desire, our egoic will to move forward. So, and Mars is important because he's the ruling planet for Aries. So every sign of the zodiac has a ruling planet, or we call it the Lord of that house or the Lord of that sign. So with this equinox, for the spring equinox, it's an astrological new year, and it governs whatever sort of kind of planted at the beginning of this kind of governs the solar return for the year. So it's almost like you start to see the themes that are going to be in play for the next year. And it's interesting in prediction wise. So in astrology, there's a few big things that are happening this year, and I won't get into all of it because it's
a few big things, girl. There's some really big things happening right around the equinox, actually.
Yes, right. Well, and yes, there's Saturn and Pluto moving into these new signs. Like we're setting the stage now for Aquarius, the Aquarian era, and it's big. So the themes for this equinox is that we have the sun and Mercury together at this time of the equinox in Aries. So this is like big ideas. We're quick thinking. We want to adapt. We want to be personal, and we want to have a lot of interaction with others, right? So this Aries energy is sort of this initiating, it's business, it's entrepreneurship, it's leadership, It's wanting to go and explore and do things on our own, heart's desire. If you're an Aries watching this, Aries, I always say either you're on the bus or you're under the bus with an Aries, because they're so driven, right? With their mission and their vision, they're going to go and get that thing done. And if you don't agree with it, they don't care. Right.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are like, oh, they don't think about anyone else. I'm like, actually, you have a trauma about that, because they're not thinking about you at all. They're just going on their mission. So that's one of the downsides to this, is that we can just be so excited to go with our ideas that we might kind of hurt a few people along the way, feeling that we're not being very considerate of others. And that being considerate is actually a trauma response to being like wanting to accommodate and being so good, the good girl syndrome, that I don't want to offend anyone. So if you have a problem with offending people, you likely have, a people pleaser tendency. So this Aries kind of equinox, Aries equinox is going to bring up some of our people pleasing tendencies, and where we feel kind of hurt when people don't consider us.
So would it then be a good idea, if, like you're saying, if we perceive someone not considering us, to just kind of keep that in mind, to say, like, things are not personal during this time, stay in your own lane kind of a feeling with it, and just know that, take things with a grain of salt?
Well, my coaching side of me wants to say there's twofold things that have to happen. One is you have to take accountability, right? It's okay. So I'm feeling hurt by this. Well, why am I feeling hurt? Does this remind me of the time that my mom didn't consider me when she did this thing? Right? So you've got to follow it back within your heart. Why do you feel this way? What happens when you feel not considered? Where did that start for you? Right? Yeah. And start to look back and own that for yourself. And then the second part of it is, if you truly felt like this relationship isn't a give and take, or this person didn't consider you, you might want to have a conversation with the person and say, but owning it from fully, right? Saying that, you know what, when this happened, I felt really not considered, and I realized this triggered a few things in me, but I'd like to talk about it in the context of our relationship. Is there ways that we could do this so that maybe you can tell me before this thing happens, or I don't have to find out from your friends that you did this thing? There's not one steadfast rule that's going to say you should do this or not, but accountability first, and then a really compassionate, taking responsibility conversation with someone else, saying, this is what happens when this happens for me. What does it feel like for you?
Yeah.
And how can we make this different next time? And if they're like, I don't want to do anything different. Okay. And then you get to make a choice, right?
Oh, that's great advice. And I know with that Aquarian age, we're moving more into collaboration, new ways of thinking of things, new ways of doing things. I'm sure there's much more to it. I know that's part of it. So it does make so much sense that you're saying, just taking responsibility and having a heartfelt, collaborative conversation. I love that. That's great advice.
Well, and Aquarius is an air sign. And so Aquarius is about thinking, and they're really heady people that really can think things through very dynamic concepts and elevate, humanity and ideas. That's what Aquarius is taking things that are already here and making them better, right? Being something that all of humanity and community can benefit from. So with that headiness, again, pros and cons of every sign is we're so in our minds, we're thinking through our feelings, not feeling our feelings, right? So the age of Aquarius is going to bring up these wonderful, breakthroughs in technology. Aquarius rules technology, breakthroughs in technology, and new, there's a prediction in the astrology community that there's going to be a new electricity form or a new power source that's going to be created or discovered that is equal to the invention of electricity, or the discovery of electricity.
Super excited about that. We need that badly.
I know, it's going to be really interesting. The other theme for this equinox is that Mars rules Aries, and Mars is in Gemini. Gemini, again, is a very intellectual sign. You're a Gemini moon. Love, information, curiosity, connection, creativity. That is going to be a real theme for all of us for this coming year. And Mars is square too. So square is a kind of conflict, but a challenge to grow, to the moon, to the sun, to Mercury and Neptune. So we're going to be really challenged to grow in our thinking, in the way we feel about our identity and what we need to release now that's not serving us anymore. And our spiritual beliefs, right? Our intuition, our connection with spirit. So there's some really big themes coming up for this year. But we also have this wonderful Mars trine to Saturn, and this means that we want to be responsible to our collective. We want to be good citizens of the world, and we're motivated to create structures that are going to last the test of time now. So we're breaking down the old, ways of doing, like things that I've been watching the US news about, the founding fathers and the things that came from the founding fathers. But that was a very toxic time, right?
Yeah.
Where we're talking about the founding fathers and what they created based on the knowledge that women weren't, actual sentient beings and didn't have the ability to think for themselves.
Yeah.
And so now there's a reiteration and a huge evolution for the US now of like, what is truly our reality? And thank you, founding fathers, but we choose this now instead.
Yeah.
So that's going to become also, we're going to see more of that in the coming year for the US as well. So it's a very interesting time for us as a collective. There's going to be some poking, to kind of get us to grow, because we might feel frustrated with this square to Mars, that we're not going as fast as we want, or the society at large is not catching up to our way of thinking. And that is going to help. We're going to really need to come into ourselves and to do a lot of healing to move past this part of history into the new paradigm.
It's so fascinating because I dabble in astrology personally. I don't do it professionally, just because I think it's fascinating and amazing how so many things are accurate if you're looking at the right stuff. But it's amazing to me how this is so much in alignment with us being collectively in a 7-year this year, which is about growth and challenge and out with the old way and in with the new way, and the resistance to that, and the way we work around it and all of that. So it is just, I don't know, it's also fascinating to me.
The synchronicity. Yes, the synchronicity, because even when you look at numerology, it is a vibration. We are energetic beings living in an energetic world, and vibration is currency. So our vibration is attracting what we want, what we don't want, right? So to help us to evolve and to elevate. And so when we think about astrology, as these planets are coming in and these frequencies are helping us to evolve as spiritual beings, we are going to be poked to grow. We are going to be poked to see, because if you're not going to do things differently, you're going to keep getting the same result, right? And this paradigm that's being birthed over the next few years is not, you can't stay the same. Right. I mean, that's what COVID was. It was a huge breaking up of the old way of thinking. And now we're creating something new. So yeah, it's all related.
How do you feel like we can expect to see it in our individual lives? How might that square show up? Other people in our space not moving fast enough for us? Or how do you think, obviously there's lots of ways and it's totally individual in our lives, but I'd love if you could just touch on that a little bit.
Well, I think signs of things changing or need for shift in your life is feeling unfulfilled. Things aren't you're not feeling happy anymore. Your purpose feels lacking. You're feeling numb to your life. You're feeling like you want to run away. Feeling anxious all the time, feeling depressed all the time. I mean, depression itself is pushing down of your emotions, depressing your emotions. Anxiety can be a fearful anticipation of the future. Anxiety can also be a biochemical, issue with your body too that requires support. So there's so much, the way forward is through healing. But really, when you're feeling sad or you're feeling unfulfilled in your life, or you're feeling like this isn't cutting it anymore, then that's a time to grow. And I think as humans, one of our old mentors, Andy Bing, always says that humans are afflicted with suffering, because our suffering is that we always want to grow. We're never satisfied with where we're at. And I think that's a biological imperative that helps us to evolve. Because if we were just satisfied with where we're at, we would all just want to be lazing around outside and not worrying about paying bills or, doing anything. We are born with ambition. We are born with drive. We are born with purpose. And so if we follow that inner guidance system, that's why intuition is so important, because it's your compass, right? If you're not connected to your compass, you feel lost. So the compass is what tells you which direction to go in, and you've got to trust yourself or create the side hustle or create the avenue while still putting food on the table, while still being safe, because safety first, right? Your nervous system needs that safety first while you're exploring your purpose and passion, right?
The cool thing is, like you said, it is the astrological new year. And it makes so much sense. I'm just thinking about it as you're talking, kind of working it out in my little brain here, that we would be at this time reevaluating what is serving us, what's no longer serving us. Where do we feel depressed or not fulfilled, and then evaluating those areas. And of course, that could be in any area of our life. And then feeling into what we want instead, or what would be once we kind of identify those areas and do our astrological New Year check-in with ourselves, or the areas just rise up, or for some of us, we probably know some glaring areas where we're not fully fulfilled. What will be the next thing we would do after that? I know I'm asking you to put on your master manifester hat a little bit now.
Well,
too.
It's going back to, excuse me, the new year, right? Every January 1st, we make a New Year's resolution. And then what do? You leave it to the side and everything goes back to normal, right? And so in manifestation, I always say manifestation is a verb. You're not just sitting there and going, okay, I want to win the lottery. And you're not buying the ticket. You're not, calling and saying, I've got the ticket, and going down and claiming it, and opening the door when they bring you your money. Like, it's all requires you to take action.
Yep.
So one of the things I always recommend for everyone is a vision board, because your vision board is a physical representation of your mission statement. What do you want for your year? And once you do it in a proper way that really sits with your being, to do, to have, right? So in my vision board workshops, we always sit with what do you need to be to do the thing you need to do to have the life you want to have? Because we often kind of just go right to the have, right? I want the relationship, I want the money, I want the house, I want the car, but you don't ever think about what do you got to do then to get that? Well, you got to make the money, right? You've got to be in a relationship. You got to heal the past, because if you're attracting all these people that are just like your exes, you know what? You're not going anywhere. You're in a cycle that hasn't shifted yet. And so then you got to go back to who do I need to be to do the thing I need to do? So I always use the example of the gym. If I want a svelte, healthy body, then I've got to go to the gym. I've got to eat right. I've got to sleep right. And if I'm not then being disciplined, organized, scheduling, doing all the things, then I'm not going to have the outcome I desire. So it all starts with the being. And Dr. Joe Dispenza, who I love, and I know I think you love him too, he says, when you change your personality, you change your outcome, you change your environment, you change your life. And how do you change your personality? You have to focus on the B's. You have to focus on what's truly important to you and release those parts of your identity. Hello, Mars squared the sun, that is no longer serving you. So my identity with, I like to sleep in, my identity with, I prioritize staying up late at night and playing on my phone. I need to change that identity and start to shift that behavior. So vision boards are like a physical manifestation of your mission statement, in essence, right? On board, you see it every day. And then you're taking the next right action while healing your trauma, healing those parts of you that are scared for this possible future. Because we like to be in this little pattern, don't we? It brings us safety. And you can't move forward if you're sitting in safety. So how do you create safety? Right. So you create safety with trying to grow a little bit and then coming back into safety, trying to grow and doing something new every day, learning something new every day gets you there, just little bits at a time.
Well, and I love what you said. It's a very simple way to look at it, but so profound at the same time, because we have it, like you said, often misordered, where we think do, have, be, right? I'm going to do this, I'm going to get this, and then I'm going to be this, right? It's like, that's not how it works. It's be first. Who do you need to be, or how do you need to express, or what do you need to heal to then be able to take the action, the inspired action sometimes through our intuition, to then, and it's not just having material things, it's having the life and the fulfillment. Wow, that's such a profound shift to look at it that way. And it's always so fascinating to me because, you and I are both mediums, but for me, the underpinning of all of this work is always the healing and the personal development. And it is, like you were saying, we want to fix the outside and think okay, well, I'm just going to make more money and then get this bigger house or whatever it is, take more vacation time, but we don't often like to do the personal development side or that soul searching, looking at ourselves, evaluating, almost like our own parent inside of our head. That's why I tell people, use your big sister voice inside your head and say okay, well, what of these behaviors is not serving who I want to show up as? Is it procrastination? Is it, like you said, maybe not choosing appropriate bedtimes? It could be very small shifts.
But it is serving something.
Yes.
And that's the key, right? It's serving something. And so you have to meet that part of you that it is serving to see what does she need or what does he need to then feel safe to let that go. right?
I love
We
it. 'Cause
often
that's
try
the
to
healing,
override.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
We try to override, right? Oh, we're just going to willpower myself forward.
Yes.
That never
That's
works
why it doesn't
because,
work, right?
right? That part of you, that inner part of you, or that little girl or little boy within you that needs that procrastination because he's scared of what's ahead.
Yeah.
He's going to override all of your forces to try to do the thing, right? Going to the gym. There's a part of me that's like, oh, I want, if I sit here and eat not bonbons, but whatever, ice cream
I would
or
love
whatever.
bonbons.
But,
that would be,
then I don't have to worry, right? I don't have to worry
Yeah.
about getting skinny and then people looking at me and then getting unwanted attention because of this thing that happened when I got unwanted attention, right? Like you have to really sit into what is so scary about your goals. Because when I ask people, I'm like, okay, what are your goals? And they're like, oh, I want to do this and I want to do this. And they're in the excitement of it. And so I had a client like 2 weeks ago, and she wants to be in a relationship so bad. And she sees me every year for an astrology update. And I said, good news. There's a really good window of opportunity here in August for something great in a relationship. And I feel it's going to progress very quickly. And she's like, oh, Sheetal, I don't know what I'm going to do with that. And I'm like, you said for the last like 4 years, you wanted a relationship. Here it is staring you at the face, potentially. And she was like, I don't know. I mean, I don't, like, I have to give up my life now for that.
Oh my goodness.
Like, oh, let's dig into this.
Yeah.
Right? This is juicy. So I was like, okay, so what would it mean for you to be in a relationship right now? And she's like, I'd have to give up my independence. And then this person's going to sleep over at my house. And then I'm going to lose my double bed. And I'm like, what if you slept in different rooms? What if they stayed at their own house? What if you just dated for a couple of years and then you see where it's going to go? And she's like, yeah, okay, that could be. And it was so interesting to see how her stress level, and like, she just pulled all her aura in at that point.
Wow.
She was really tense because she was a little nervous. Like, now this thing that I wanted is right here, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing with lottery winners that lose it all within 3-4 years, right? 70% of lottery winners go bankrupt within the first 3 years, right? It's because they don't have their thermostat really set at that level of abundance. They're still stuck down here at like, this is what I know. I know how to be in debt. But when I have a lot of money, I don't know how to deal with that. And then all these fearful things start to come in. So that's where the healing is, right?
For sure. And I mean, even one way that I mean, you can tell me if this resonates with you. One way I usually look at it is if there's a goal that I have, or if that's something that I say to myself or to others I want to do. And then when I'm needing to do the prep work or take the action, I find myself in resistance or procrastinating or sleeping in or any of the other things that equal resistance. That for me is like my own red flag, where then I'm looking at, okay, what I feel like I want and my actions are not congruent. So why am I resisting? What is going on here? Is there a fear under here? Do I not actually want this thing? Is this just something that I feel like I'm supposed to do? And that's where the resistance is. Is it someone else's idea and it doesn't feel like it belongs to me? There's a lot of ways to investigate for healing and kind of dig under there. But I love that you work so diligently in this area, because for me, it is the thing that fertilizes everything else and lets everything else shift and move and grow. And it is often the thing we don't want to do or don't want to look at because it's uncomfortable sometimes to look at these things, right?
Mm-hmm. I'll even suggest, I love all your accountability questions there about like, okay, what does this really mean for you? Do I want this goal? Was it someone else's? And I'll suggest when you set a big lofty goal, and this is for all your viewers and listeners as well, is when you set a big lofty goal, your second question is, what about this scares me?
That's good.
What is scary? If this outcome was to come true today, what would scare me about it? And who would I have to be that scares me? Right? Because that part of you is going to be holding you from this goal, right? If you're scared that if you make a lot of money or, this podcast goes global and you go all, and what happens if you have people now going, Joy, I need you to come in here and Joy. And now you're like, what about my family life? And what about all of that? That part of you that's scared of this being too big is going to then sabotage, right? And sabotage is just another word for keeping safe. It's going to keep you safe by making sure you don't grow too big. So
sabotage is another word for keeping safe. That is delicious. I love that.
Because there's no such thing as yourself sabotaging yourself. Like yourself wants you to succeed, but your brain will always keep you safe. You cannot override safety. And I keep like preaching that like crazy because in spirituality and especially in the wellness industry, it's like just mindset yourself over that hill. And I'm like, you cannot mindset yourself over safety. If your brain has created safety and this podcast is good at just this level of growth and this is fine, I don't want bigger, because bigger means more mess or more notoriety or trolls coming for me, whatever that looks like for you, whatever story you've made in your mind, it will not let you hit past that plateau. So I think that is the biggest flag. Like you said, like there's something here, I'm sabotaging myself, and I'm actually keeping myself safe. So
it's a big thing. I love the way you frame that. It's a big thing to investigate within ourselves, because I feel like some of the time, maybe most of the time, it's either unconscious or subconscious, or we've just kind of hidden it back there somewhere as forward facing. Oh, I want this, but I'm not doing it. And so, sometimes we definitely know the reason we're not, but other times we don't. And it is checking in. That's a great point with like, am I feeling like my safety is threatened? And I don't mean necessarily physical safety, although it could be, but is my emotional, energetic, personal, is that mechanism being triggered for some reason that I'm not aware of in here? Wow. That's such a great, clients and students. And I think one of the biggest things we probably hear is people feeling stuck. And this to me seems like the key to unsticking.
It's so true. What am I scared of that's going to happen if I achieve this goal? And be true with it. Like, don't be like, oh no, I'm not scared of anything. There's a part of you that's scared. Otherwise you would have had it by now. Right. Yeah. So in manifestation, I always talk about what's the healing that's required, because you cannot manifest past your healing. You only manifest as fast as your healing allows.
That's such an important point, because I do feel like we've been talking about, I think sometimes we avoid the healing and digging because it's uncomfortable. And also, like you're saying, we can be really honest with ourselves. We don't have to share the information outside of our journal or our own thoughts, but it is such an important investigation. And it sounds like one of the things we could be doing to harness this, spring equinox energy and alignments to help move us through this growth period, maybe, or into a place of more fulfillment.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, this square to Mars, like we have 2 planets are in Pisces, which is about our spirituality, our intuition. And then there's 2 planets in Aries, which is about our get up and go and our egoic will to move forward. So our ego and our spirit are wanting to move forward, but our spirit requires healing, which is Pisces, and Aries, it needs forward momentum and egoic satiation to move forward. So these 2 things this year is going to be about forward momentum for the collective, but we'll need healing in order to do that. So we're going to see an example of this is within the U.S. government. There's a part of the U.S. government wants to go and has all these ideas and things to move forward. And then there's other parts like, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? And so it's the 2 parts of us, which is like, we need the safety, and we also have the drive. And then if we can move these things together while healing, we're going to continue to move forward. So
and what it feels like is perhaps in the past, it has worked enough for us to really just move one of those wheels or the other. And it seems like as we step more into this Aquarian age, that's no longer going to work. We're going to need to do both of these things at the same time, all the time. Am I understanding that right?
Well, yes. And the Aquarian age is like, it's interesting because Aries is mine and Libra is ours. Right. So the nodes of the moon, which is our karmic destiny and our karmic past, are moving this year in June, July, into Aries Libra. So there's going to have to be a balance between your needs and our needs. Right. So Aquarius is our needs as a collective versus Leo is my gifts and talents, my needs, my way I want to shine. The opposite of Leo is Aquarius, our needs, using your gifts and talents to elevate the collective. Why I love astrology so much as well is it's got these dichotomies that help us integrate 2 parts of the whole, right? We need each other. Aquarius is we need each other to elevate humanity. So, one of the things you said is like, you don't need to bounce this off someone else. You can do it for yourself. But the hardest thing is we can't see our own blind spots.
That's
right?
true.
We can't see our own where we need to, like, why am I doing this? That's why we need coaches and therapists, right? Because they're going, oh, this is why you're doing this. You don't realize this program is in the background because it's so good at operating as your own system that you don't realize that's part of your identity. You've adopted that, if I get too big, people see me and then I get bullied. So I'm going to make sure that I always stay at this level. so I never get bullied again. And then it's not until someone says, hey, why don't you like to be seen? And you're like, well, I don't know. And then we start to dig into, well, where were you seen and you got hurt? And then they're like, oh my God, that time in grade 3 when I was bullied. And then there's the operating system. And now we go back and reprogram that.
Well, and it's so true what you said, that a lot of these, I call them beliefs, patterns, programs, subconscious things that we're running like this are from choices and observations and deductions we made as a much younger, less experienced version of ourselves, who then collected data to like check that box of like, oh, okay, not safe to be me here type of a thing. So yeah, it's such an incredible connection between those things.
Well, and that's how our brain is wired, right? Like up till the age of 7, and this is in astrology too, we call these Saturn cycles. So Saturn moves into our chart at the time that we're born. Saturn is at a specific sign or placement. And then every 7 years, it squares or opposes itself. So it's a 28-year cycle all the way around. Yeah. So every 7 years, the 7-year itch, or every 7 years you have a growth pattern in whatever you start, you'll start to have a challenge to it to help you grow. And Saturn is about responsibility, mastery, being the authority figure at whatever you do. So these Saturn cycles are always in play. Whatever you start, your relationship, 7 years from the start of your relationship, you will have a challenge to your relationship. 1,000%. I don't even have to know what it is. You will have a challenge, right? Then 14
Saturn, the
years,
teacher, right?
Right? Exactly.
Yep.
So the taskmaster of the zodiac is what I like to call him.
Oh, that's a good way to say it.
So yes, these cycles are all in play in your life, whether you know it or not, right? And I think that's why I love astrology, because you can know it. You can flow with it. You can say, okay, this is why this is happening now. This is why I'm having a challenge to my relationship. And you know what? It's strong enough that's going to last through this challenge, but we can come through it with awareness and we can grow it and strengthen it. Or if there's so many cracks that it's meant to fall apart, then this relationship is meant to fall apart now. It's for something better to come in. It's lasted. It's done now. Right? So you can sort of see that in the astrology. It gives you hope. And I think that's why I love it so much.
Yeah, it does give hope, and it does help understand the challenges and how they are, like you said, moving us to a place of growth and to that bridge to the next place that where our heart desires, our soul desires us to be. So I love that outlook. I know that you do private sessions one-on-one. Do you also do private astrology, chart readings for people, as well as teaching and coaching and manifesting and all the things you do?
I do a lot of things. Yes, as I said, as Sagittarius, I'm multi-passionate.
I love it.
Sagittarius moon. So yes, I do astrology readings for clients. And then I don't teach astrology at this point in time. I know there's been a lot of call from my clients to teach it. At this point in time, I'm considering it, but I have not. There's a lot to know,
There's a lot to know, which is why I don't study it, because I'm just like, I get overwhelmed every time I learn a little, and then I'm like, okay, that's enough for now.
Yeah, 6 years of constant studying to pass the exam. Like that was a lot. It's a lot to know. But there's basic astrology that I'm sure you can read your own chart and learn how to do that. And that would probably be my focus if I decided to teach it this year.
But if someone was wanting to get a reading from you and understand their chart, or perhaps connect with loved ones as well, they can find that through your website, which we'll link in the show notes.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, good. Just making sure. It's one of the things I get asked for quite frequently. It's not something I do. And it's, that's one of the reasons I'm so excited to share you. 'Cause I'm like, I got Sheetal. She's amazing at all of this. And she can tell you all about yourself.
Well, and you said something interesting, like the mediumship. I don't combine the mediumship with astrology because I feel like it uses two different parts of my brain. Yeah. So I did try to do it early on, and it just didn't work. It felt too bumpy for me. So I have mediumship as a separate offering, and I do combine mediumship with tarot if they want it, so they can have that session. So my 3 offerings that I have is tarot, mediumship, and astrology for readings. And then I do grief counseling, and then a whole bunch of classes like intuition development. And I'm doing a new one on Lady Luck. The Lucky Girl Syndrome. Oh my God, it's so much fun for manifestation. So lots of manifestation things like that. And so
that's so cool. So I will link your website in the show notes for everyone who wants to learn more about all of your offerings as they continue to unfurl throughout the year. And I'm sure you're offering more and more throughout the year. Wow. Who doesn't want to be a lucky gal or guy, right? And have
So
just
much
that
fun.
lucky touch and all your friends saying, oh my gosh, how are you so lucky all the time?
I'm
Who
so
doesn't want
lucky.
that, right?
I mean, that's part, it's so much fun. Like, as I dig into these concepts and go, gosh, how can we help everyone to, you know, put this into their life and put this into action? So I feel like that's one of my gifts, is being able to sort of say, how can we, and you said it early on, and that's why we get along so well, is that practical application of these gifts. Like, let's use this to better society and the world, right? And enter this Aquarian age together, you know, really making everybody's life better.
Oh, I love that. Wow. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today, for sharing all your wealth of wisdom and your gifts with us. It's been an awesome conversation. And like I said, I will link all of Sheetal's info in the show notes. And I'm hoping, I had asked her kind of subtly in an email if perhaps she'd be willing to come back and share more astrological milestones with us throughout the year and give us little tidbits and tips and heads up, which she so graciously has said perhaps she will do for us.
That's an F yes, not a perhaps. Oh my God, Joy. That's an F yes. Are you kidding
so you can look forward to seeing more of Sheetal with me. So I'm so excited. And the way you break it down is just it's simple but complex at the same time. So it's like easy to understand, but then really gives me anyway something to like chew on and think about and figure out the ways that we can apply it to our own lives. So I am going to be listening back to this episode myself as well to hear all of the astro information again. If you want to connect with Sheetal Story, again, she's incredible grief counselor and coach and a beautiful medium, and as you've learned today, a very gifted astrologer as well, among other things. So thank you so much for being here with us. Big hugs, and we will catch up very soon.
Thank you for having me. I'm so honored, and I can't wait to be back.
What an incredible conversation with this incredible soul, Sheetal Story. I'm just wondering what your takeaways were and what you're going to be looking at in this really spring equinox time where we're having this astrological new year. Are you going to be looking at the areas of your life where you're not feeling fulfilled, or where you're feeling unhappy or not satisfied in some way? Are you going to be working on being more in community? Like Sheetal was saying, we can't see our own blind spots, and sometimes we do need help identifying why we're not happy or why we're afraid to go after that thing we say we want. So leave some comments for me and let me know what you're taking away from this equinox prediction, what you're going to be implementing or looking at, or the energy that you're excited for in this new year. This Aquarian age, as Sheetal was saying, is about advancements and collaboration and a new way of doing things. Is there something in your life that you're hoping to have a new way of doing? And if you do want your own astrological reading, Sheetal's an amazing soul, as you got to know a little bit today. I will link her website below, sheetalstory.com. She does have, as she mentioned, that Intuition 101, she's calling it, I believe, starting up in April. So that'll be on her website as well. And I'm going to link to all of her social. She is just such an incredible, bright person that I just love her. And I'm so grateful she decided and agreed to come on as a guest. And like I said, she will be joining us sometime in the summer to talk about the summer solstice that we'll be having. I am so excited to be able to share some of the astrological side of things, especially with someone who has these mediumistic gifts and who is trained in so many other things. It just lets us have such of a different perspective on all of this, right? So thank you so much for joining me today. Again, if you are wanting to learn more about Sheetal or connect with her, check those show notes. I know her website is sheetalstory.com, but I will also have links below. She is in Canada. So for those of you that are in Canada, you can work with her, but she does work internationally. So she works with clients in the US as well as overseas, just like I think most of us do at this point. And again, don't forget about that big Spring Equinox inspired group reading that I've got coming up on March 19th. Check my social links. You will see it there. There are posts. There are all kinds of things, and it is called Spring Forward with Spirit. So if you are wanting to attend a live demonstration of mediumship online from the comfort of your own home with myself and friend of the show, Ms. Carolyn Wilkins, that will be coming up on March 19th. And it is a Sunday, and we've done it during the day. So 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. I think it's 8 p.m. UK. I'm so excited to be with you guys. And like I said, Sheetal will be back with us in the summer to share more of her astrological insights and predictions. She is just such a wealth of wisdom for us. And I love the way she was able to reframe things. Like I was saying, I think we do always think about it as do, be, or do, have, be, right? I'm going to do this, I'm going to have this, and then I'm going to be this. When really it's so profound to think of it as actually the other way around. Be, do, have. So we need to work on who we want to be, who we want to show up as. And like she so graciously was sharing with us with this spring equinox, that is the energy that we're moving into, is evaluating who we want to be, how we want to show up, what's serving us and not serving us. So what an incredible episode. And remember, that spring equinox is coming up on March 20th. So it's great to have this info a little ahead if you're hearing this a little ahead of that. But even if you're not, just like the new year, the energy will still be this for the rest of the year, the themes for the astrological new year for the rest of this calendar year. So let me know how this resonated with you and what you're already starting to become aware of within yourself as maybe who you want to step into being. I love the way she said that astrology is like a bridge that is showing us how to get from where we currently are to that version of ourselves or our life experience that we want to go to next, that next chapter, right? So what an incredible way to look at astrology. I was so grateful to Sheetal for sharing her gifts and her wisdom with us. Such an incredible person to have. And I'm so grateful to each of you for spending this time with us, for being here with me. You guys know I care so deeply about you and your growth and your advancement and your healing as well. So if there are other topics you're wanting to hear about, you can let me know about those as well. And I'll either do solo topics like we have every other week, or be bringing on guests to share more of what you want with you, these incredible spiritual luminaries of our time. And you're a spiritual luminary too. You are a unique soul in this human experience with your own very special spiritual gifts. And I don't want you to ever forget it. Thanks for being here with me today, guys. Big hugs, lots of love. Bye for now from inside the Spirit Speakeasy.